How did EU digital policy come about and how did it facilitate communication in the EU? In their series Look Back and Look Ahead, the German EU Council presidency answers these questions. The abolition of roaming charges in 2017 has led to a sharp increase in the use of mobile phones abroad and is hailed as a great success. However, this milestone was only reached after decades of cooperation in European digital policy and is just one example of a new era in which the EU is to be made fit for the digital future. Emergence of the EU digital market happened when the use of digital communication increased rapidly in the 1970s. It was already clear by the end of this decade that this sector would become a cornerstone of the EU's economic success and have far-reaching implications for society as a whole. As part of an action program of the European Economic Community, the EEC, in 1984, both the expansion of the infrastructure and the standardization of ISDN networks and the terminal equipment market were financially supported. In the years that followed, further liberalization measures were taken, which for example resulted in consumers being able to purchase telephones, fax machines and modems from companies other than their service provider, which had been unimaginable until then. The global market changed significantly in the 1980s, as monopolies were abolished and state-owned companies were privatized around the world. The first major privatization in Europe came in 1984 with the sale of British Telecom. It became clear in which direction the market was developing. The EEC recognized that the liberalization of the market had to be regulated EU-wide, and in 1987 published a central strategy paper that paved the way for the wave of privatization of the 1990s. By 1998, the market for private telephone services was already in full swing, and the EU competition rules were fully applicable to telecommunications companies. And the next revolution in digital communication was not long in coming. As more and more people buy goods and services online, it is becoming increasingly important to manage electronic commerce. The internet offers consumers great convenience, but it also harbors certain risks. In the Directive on Electronic Commerce of the European Union from 2000, areas such as liability, electronically concluded contracts, and the country of origin principle are regulated. This principle defines which laws apply to the marketing and sales of goods and services in other countries. From 2010, the digital unit of the EU, the digital single market, came more and more to the fore, and topics such as net neutrality, the principle that internet service providers should give users equal access to all web services and content, won the digital agenda for Europe of the European Commission from 2010 is gaining in importance. One of the most popular and well-known initiatives is the abolition of roaming charges. During the German EU Council presidency in 2007, the first regulation was implemented that included a way to EU-wide price caps. As a result, consumer prices for calls, SMS and mobile data have gradually and consistently been reduced. The European Parliament and the European Council voted in 2016 to abolish all roaming charges, which came into force in 2017. In 2015, the European Commission presented an ambitious and comprehensive strategy for the digital single market, which brought a large number of improvements to the everyday digital life of consumers. Thanks to the regulation against unjustified geo-blocking, online retailing must make its offers available to consumers in the various EU countries at the same prices. Another new regulation enables EU citizens to use their streaming services and online subscriptions while in other EU countries. Bookings via online portals such as travel agencies and websites for reserving holiday accommodations are more fair and transparent for consumers. Data protection on the internet has also been improved. Our digital world is developing at an enormous speed. It is therefore vital that Europeans continue to work together to create a digital future that will benefit them. Whether big data and artificial intelligence or topics such as data protection and digital rights, there are numerous challenges. And yes, the European Union has not every time found the right answers. But how can we ensure that Europe remains innovative and competitive, and what are the right incentives to create a strong European AI ecosystem? It is precisely these questions that are currently on the agenda of the German EU Council presidency. The aim is to develop a European AI approach in which innovation and trust in a borderless unified AI market are two sides of the same coin. Germany is committed to a common European approach that will use the potential of digital technologies and minimize their risks. Chancellor Angela Merkel emphasized the European need to be digitally sovereign. That means to be independent with critical digital infrastructure. In cooperation with companies and associations from various European countries, the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy is at the forefront of the development of a sovereign data infrastructure. Gaia-X will be a federal open data infrastructure that supports cross-country innovations collaboration. Both fair and transparent business models, as well as the individual rights to data privacy, will be promoted by Gaia-X. The new data infrastructure will increase the competition in the market and expand the freedom of choice of the users and thus help to prevent a monopoly of the big data market by a few private companies. On October 15th, the EU ministers responsible for telecommunications and digital met to discuss a number of issues in the field of digitization. Topics such as data economy, artificial intelligence, and digital services were high on the agenda. The discussions on the topic of digital services focused on how a modern European legal framework can be created for them. The ministers agreed that the existing legal framework must be adapted to new digital developments and the changed competitive landscape. Large platforms can control increasing proportions of important platform ecosystems of the digital economy. It is therefore important that fair competition for small and medium-sized service companies is ensured in the ecosystem of online platforms. On the basis of the European Commission's European Data Strategy of February 2020, which contains proposals for a legal framework for regulating the common European data space, the ministers also discussed how interoperability between data standards can be improved. This framework will create incentives for secure data exchange between all actors and improve the conditions for data usage. The legal framework will be closely related to the establishment of the European Cloud Federation, on which the ministers adopted a joint declaration during the meeting. In the declaration, the EU member states undertake to expand European network and develop synergies between existing data and cloud initiatives. During its presidency of the Council of the European Union, Germany will work to ensure that Europe continues on its way to a modern, secure, and innovative digital community. Many of the EU's achievements and regulations can only be understood by looking at their long history. And so does the German government take the informal councils and other events during the German EU Council presidency as an opportunity to take a look back at the emergence of different policy areas in the European Union. At the same time, they ask, how can the EU develop further in this area? And if you now want to know more about European or global politics, YouTube has chosen another of my videos right here for you in the end screen, right next to your chance to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in my next video. Click and enjoy. Viel Spaß!